Some dare call it conspiracy.
Welcome to Some Dare Call It Conspiracy with Brent Lee and Neil Sanders.
As the planet spirals into a fascist dystopia, we thought someone really should keep a record of this decline, so that when the aliens are sifting through the ashes of civilization, they might be able to see where it all went wrong.
This is The World According to Some.
Or as all the hepcats are calling it, T.W.A.T.S.
Where did we leave off?
Well, where we'd left it was that Nick Fuentes was arguing with Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson, because Tucker Carlson had called him a strange little gay boy, and Candace Owens had been very rude to him during an interview, and then hidden this said interview behind a paywall. And so he'd started catting back at her, and then Milo, who used to be friends with Nick Fuentes, decided to jump in and start sticking up for Candace. So Milo Yiannopoulos, he was born as Milo Hanrahan Yiannopoulos in Kent, and his father's is half Greek, half Irish, and his mother's German. But here's an interesting thing: despite the fact that he proclaims to be Roman Catholic, his mother's actually Jewish. Now, if you're in conspiracy circles, like, everybody says, well, if your mother's Jewish, then you're Jewish. It's a thing that you get. Like, that's how it works. It's hereditary, apparently, and this has actually genuinely caused him some sort of outs with certain crowds. In fact, just recently, actually, I saw him tweet out the other day. Somebody had tweeted out that he was Jewish and that he was gay, and he said that he wasn't. That he was Jewish and he was gay, and he tweeted out that he wasn't Jewish, that he was white. Yeah.
What,
pretty grim.
An Ashkenazi Jew?
God knows. Like, it's all very, like,
so they're
grim.
not really Jewish.
Do you know the very first thing that Milo did to sort of bring himself onto the scene, so to speak?
No, I can't remember.
You won't get this. This is before he did all his Gamergate stuff. Before he worked for the Catholic Herald, he was a poet. He self-published a book.
I was going to say rapper.
Well, not far off.
Damn.
He published a book of poetry in 2007 with an incredibly woke-sounding name. You won't get this. Under the pseudonym Milo Andreas Wagner, he published a book of poetry that was titled Eskimo Papoose. Yeah, but
what?
It's worse than that.
What does papoose even mean? I know there's a rapper called Papoose.
A papoose is the sort of fur-lined thing that they stick on the back that they wrap babies in. So I'm pretty sure that's what a papoose is. So yeah, it's very sensitive, and it's the sort of thing. It immediately evokes sort of dream catchers, wind chimes, and that sort of shit. Like, to me, like, it's that sort of a name. But this was the name of the title of his self-published poetry book. However, there was a slight problem with some of the lyrics.
Please tell me he had a ghostwriter.
Not exactly, but sort of. He plagiarized much of his poetry from the lyrics of Tori Amos. Yes, apparently, like, people that have gone back and read this have noticed that he just stole large chunks of Tori Amos lyrics. There was there's this guy called Chris Cluey, who was sort of an opponent of the Gamergate lot, and he pointed out that numerous lyrics were just taken whole cloth from Tori Amos lyrics. He writes, in the second chapter of Nympholepsy Part 1, which is presumably one of his poems, appears the line, "I was looking for a saviour beneath these dirty sheets," which is a misquoted part of the chorus from Tori Amos's Crucify from the Little Earthquakes album. In Sword of Vengeance, he uses the line, "Muhammad, my friend, I'm getting very scared," which is apparently from the Tori Amos song Boys for Pele. Other poems apparently pull lyrics from the songs Sparks and Blood Roses, and he never attributes them. He basically thought that he would get away with it. Although when he was actually discovered and latterly accused of plagiarism, what he said was that, no, you've misunderstood what it was that I was trying to do. I was using other people's words in the same way that sampling is done in music. So, he's the DJ Shadow of poetry, apparently. He just got caught. And so that was his excuse.
That's what he was trying to say.
Yeah. No.
Like a shout out to...
Well, it's more like I'm making a collage out of other people's things. So I'm making like a sort of it would be more akin to a mixtape or something like that. But it's still just...
Well, it's kind of like how sometimes rappers will start a verse with "It was all a dream."
Yeah.
It's a Biggie reference, but
there's even that.
It's that kind of thing that he's trying to say, but
yeah, but that's bollocks. The closest you could say would be that Onyx album, Trigonometry, where they literally sort of take classic hip hop songs and change the lyrics to invoke guns and stuff like that, but do the same flow and cadence and whatnot. But no, it's just thought he could get away with it, basically. Then, after he dropped out of university, he went to work for the Catholic Herald before being a technology journalist with the Daily Telegraph. Apparently, during his time at the Catholic Herald as well, similarly to Candace, a lot of the articles that we're writing about were sort of, all these bullies on the internet, and these bullies, and aren't people horrible and stuff like that, which similarly to Candace is just the mirror opposite of the image that he portrays nowadays, which means that either these people have gone through these epiphanies, so to speak, and come out the other side and been pilled or whatever, or they've rather mercenarily decided, yep, that's where the money is. And I think that it's potentially that. Anyway, in November 2011, he was either kicked out or left the Daily Telegraph and decided to launch his own technology website, which was called The Kernel. And the phrase that they used was that the kernel will fix European technology journalism. But he didn't do that. And a couple of years later, it was shut down because essentially Yiannopoulos decided that it wasn't really necessary to pay any of his staff. Now, the staff obviously thought that this was not the case and took him to court. Former contributor Jason Hess won a summary judgment from an employment tribunal against the Kernel's parent company, Sentinel Media. Yiannopoulos threatened another contributor seeking payment with blackmail by saying that he would release embarrassing photographs and details that he knew about this person to the public. So the Kernel basically closed in 2013, and Yiannopoulos had done he'd done a sort of presser saying we're fine despite all of this, blah, blah, blah. We're going to carry on and keep doing what it is that we do, which is holding technology journalism to account. And then they would shut down the following day because they didn't actually have any money. But in 2014, he started writing for Breitbart News. And he was initially part of the Breitbart tech section. But during his time there, one of the things that was discovered later was that he was actually letting card-carrying Nazis and far-right people write stories, and he would sign his name to them. And because he's a gay guy, or identified as gay at the time, because now he claims to have prayed that all away, it acted as camouflage for cunts in a similar way as a lot of other people that we've mentioned. It gave a degree of, well, hang on, This isn't just coming from a neo-Nazi. This isn't coming from sort of twisted neo-Nazi. This is coming from Milo Yiannopoulos.
Yeah, basically like Candace Owens
yeah,
and Blair White.
Yeah, and Dan Wharton and Darren Grimes and various other people. Like it's an obvious tactic. Basically, what happened was in 2017, BuzzFeed leaked a load of emails from Yiannopoulos from his account of Breitbart to various people. He had a ghostwriter called Alum Bakhari, and they basically solicited ideas from people like Curtis Yarvin. Curtis Yarvin's a central figure of what is called the neo-reactionary movement. Devin Saucier, who is the editor of a white supremacist magazine called American Renaissance. Andrew Auernheimer. Do you know who Andrew Auernheimer is? Like, we've mentioned him before. He goes by the nickname Weave.
Oh,
he
yeah.
The former. He was a hacker that basically went to prison for hacking AT&T. He had an association with Barrett Brown. They don't get on. And despite again being Jewish, Andrew Auernheimer is a Nazi. He's got a big swastika tattooed on his chest, and I forget which magazine he works for at the minute, but he's the Daily Stormer. That's it. He's I think he's an administrator there. Also, Baked Alaska, who I'm not sure if he's like an actual Nazi or whether he just sort of dips his toes in that sort of water. He's certainly anti-Semitic, but all of these people were basically writing copy for Breitbart, and obviously it wouldn't have been put out if people knew who it really was. So Milo put his name on it. The story that was broken by BuzzFeed in 2017 also pointed out that Yiannopoulos had a penchant for using personal passwords with anti-Semitic or Nazi overtones. One of his passwords was Cristal. Now, not like the champagne, it was spelled Kristall, which is a reference to Kristallnacht, the Night of Broken Glass. And one of his less subtle passwords was Long Knives 1290. Which is a compound reference to obviously the Night of the Long Knives and the Edict of Expulsion. So this is obvious. It goes beyond beyond being edgy or beyond being sort of interested in a historical perspective. Some have said. He also, in 2014, he emerged as a lead actor in the Gamergate harassment campaign. So we were saying that this is where Candace got her starts, because she was speaking to Zoe Quinn. Milo was on the other side of that. Milo was one of the people that basically was pushing the abuse and helping coordinate a lot of it, as far as I'm aware. In a 2015 episode of Gavin McInnes of the Proud Boys, Yiannopoulos said that child sex abuse is really not that big a deal. You really can't let it ruin your life. And then he was obviously criticised for mocking child sex abuse victims by calling them, and I quote, whinging selfish brats for suddenly remembering that they were abused and suddenly deciding that it was a problem 20 years after the abuse occurred. And he also said that there was a huge disproportionate overlap between homosexual men and paedophiles. Now, just put a pin in all of that, because that might come up to prove Milo somewhat hypocritical in the not too distant future. In 2015, he was interviewed by Joe Rogan, and a lot of people sort of saw this. Some people mentioned that some of the things he said were fucked up at the time, but it wasn't really until a bit later, as we'll come on to, that people started to really scrutinize what was said and go, hang on. For example, during the interview, Yiannopoulos claims, I lost my virginity in an interracial fivesome with a drag queen. How old were you? Asked Rogan. 13, maybe 14. It was great. Later on, Rogan touches upon child abuse among Catholic priests, which prompts Yiannopoulos to discuss a priest from his childhood. And Rogan says, he made you suck his dick for real? And Yiannopoulos responds, "He didn't make me. I was enthusiastic about it." He then says, "He was a great priest, but he's going to get lynched now." "How old were you at the time?" asked Rogan. "I was in my teens," replies Yiannopoulos, before going on to ask Rogan, "Oh, come on, you've never seen a 15-year-old girl at any point in your life, however old you were. You've never seen a 15-year-old girl you thought was hot. When you were 25, when you were 30, you will have seen girls at 15 that you thought were hot. Of course you did." He then clarified his experience. He says, "I was a very mature 14-year-old. It wasn't molestation. It was perfectly consensual. When I was 14, trust me, I was the predator. I was aggressively seeking out the sexual company of adults." And he also went on a podcast called The Drunken Peasants and discussed this slightly in the future. And the question was, sounds like the Catholic priest molestation to me. And the answer was, "I was very grateful for Father Michael. I wouldn't give nearly such good head if it wasn't for him." And he also asserted on this podcast that young boys may discover who they are through such relationships, which can give them security and safety and provide them with love and reliable rock when they can't speak to their parents. And he further commented that this kind of statutory rape and child abuse happens a lot in the LGBT community, which is basically a sort of very tired and bigoted dog whistle. So also on the Rogan show, this exchange happened. After he said that he was the predator, he was the one at 14 that was pursuing adults, Rogan starts to ask about Bryan Singer, who had been accused of sexual impropriety with young boys on the sets of numerous films, and also through his friends with, I believe it was Brock Pierce and somebody else. He was friends with two other people that were paedophiles and had been arrested for it, and they were known to have boat parties. I can't remember the other guy's name, but if you look it up, it's all online. I can see his face, but I can't remember his name. Anywho, this particular back and forth between Rogan and Milo happened. Rogan says, "Do you think that's what's going on with the guy who directed X-Men, Bryan Singer, a bunch of 14-year-old predators going after that poor man?" And Milo says, "No, I'm not sure that's the case with him. No, that's a guy that lived in Hollywood a while ago, briefly." And Rogan interrupts and says, "Did you go to one of his parties?" And Milo says, "I went to other people who I won't name of a similar stature in Hollywood. I went to their boat parties and to their house parties, and some of the things that I have seen have beggared belief." And Rogan says, "Well, can you give us like a..." And Milo interrupts and says, "Well, I don't want to be indiscreet about specific people. I think it's going to be dangerous." So Rogan says, "Well, just dance around the facts, yeah." And Milo says, "But I can tell you the truth without dropping anyone in it. I mean, some of the boys there were very young, very young. I don't remember. I know like 8 years ago, but I don't remember." And Rogan says, "Statute of limitations." And Milo says, "Well, I don't remember whether I ever met Bryan Singer or whether I even knew who he was then, but I knew other people of a similar stature, as I say, and there were some very young boys around at that time. There was a lot of drugs and a lot of twinks taking drugs and having unsafe sex with older men, and some of these boys were very young." In the Drunken Peasants episode, he also basically said that relationships between 13-year-old boys and adults can happen perfectly consensually because some 13-year-olds are, in his view, sexually and emotionally mature enough to consent to sex with adults. And he spoke favorably of both the gay 13-year-old boys having sex with adult men and straight 13-year-old boys having sex with adult women. And he used his own experience as an example, saying that he was mature enough to be capable of giving consent at a young age. He also said that paedophilia is not a sexual attraction to somebody who's 13 who is sexually mature, but rather that paedophilia is an attraction to children who have not reached puberty. So technically it's hebephilia. It's like, oh, well, in which case that's fine then. Later in the interview, he basically got a bit of pushback from the hosts, and said that he believes that I think the age of consent law is probably about right. It's probably roughly the right age, but there are certainly people who are capable of giving consent at a younger age. I certainly consider myself to be one of them. Now, this all came out in 2017 at a similar time to all the scandals about his emails, passwords, and allowing neo-Nazis to write copy for him at Breitbart. And he was supposed to attend and address CPAC, but basically he was dropped because everybody just said that his position was completely untenable. And he also was being financed by Robert Mercer, supported by Steve Bannon at the time, and both of them completely disavowed him and said that what he did was disgusting. And it got even worse for him because at the time Milo's star was somewhat rising. He'd been on things like Bill Mayer, and he was starting to be a little bit like a sort of Ann Coulter figure. Do you know what I mean? Like a sort of someone who can come on and will be outrageous, but they'll also be witty with it and to a degree erudite, and they'll be an interesting guest. And he got a $250,000 contract with Schuster and Schuster to write a book, which was going to be called Dangerous.
The kind of person that would, like, Piers Morgan would ask on, yeah?
Yeah, all the time. Yeah, in fact, he must be kicking himself at the minute because, like, he would be a regular on Piers Morgan's shows. But he's too hot property because of the things that he said on the Competence and on the Rogan show.
Because of the paedophile stuff, yeah.
Because of the paedophile stuff, yeah. It's the paedophile stuff that's really put a stain on his reputation, all that paedophilia, and yeah, it's not good. So Schuster and Schuster, major publisher, was going to publish his book, Dangerous. And it announced in 2017 that they're going to cancel the project because they're basically, again, it's the paedophilia stuff, isn't it? Like, that's the thing that's caused all these problems. And the silly sod decided, well, fuck that. I'm not paying you back the money. And furthermore, I'm going to sue you for $10 million over a breach of contract with me. And so this was a mistake on a number of counts. One, because it came out in this lawsuit, and what's it called, where you have to discovery, during the discovery, that he didn't write the book, that he paid Alan Bokhari, who wrote for him at Breitbart, his ghostwriter. He was paid $100,000 by Yiannopoulos to do the writing for him, and also that the writing was shit and the ideas were shit and it was just dreadful. It's like, so he ended up publishing the book himself, and you can download the bad version for free because it's contained in the lawsuit. Okay, and what's fabulous is that we also got all the notes from the publisher and the editors and what their concerns were about the drafts as they were coming in. Oh my God. The editor, Mitchell Ivers. Yeah, exactly. So Mitchell Ivers, he received the first draft and he described it as, at best, a superficial work full of incendiary jokes with no coherent or sophisticated analysis of any political issues. So not brilliant. As sort of changes were made, they started to give feedback. And one of the feedback notes that was given to Yiannopoulos was that you need a stronger argument against feminism than saying that they are simply ugly and sexless women who have cats, which indicates that potentially it wasn't the strongest argument. And another note was, this chapter needs a better central thesis than the notion that gay people should just go back in the closet. Yeah. At one point, the publishers criticised his historical knowledge with a note that said, with a response to a comment in his book that Yiannopoulos had written, when America landed on the moon, the Cold War essentially ended. In response to this particular sentence, Ivers stated the moon landing was in 1969, but the Berlin Wall did not fall until 1990. Russia quitting the space race was not the end of the Cold War. There was a section that was removed because of false claims about Hillary Clinton's connection to a satanic sex ring. And with a note, this entire paragraph is just repeating fake news. At multiple points, the publishers called on Yiannopoulos to substantiate assertions made in the book, and he was criticized for suggesting that the Hollywood left was far more racist than Nazis, with the editor noting, "I don't like using Nazi analogies ever." Ivers also suggested that Yiannopoulos' criticism, he basically said that contemporary feminism is merely a capitalist con job, a money grab designed to sell T-shirts to Taylor Swift and Beyonce fans with asinine slogans. And the note just simply had a link to his website and just said, like your Milo swag, because he was selling T-shirts with asinine slogans on there. So, yeah, not brilliant. He ended up owing them all costs, and I believe he ended up having to pay back the money that he was fronted. So it didn't really work out very well for him. Also, in 2017, he was filmed singing "America the Beautiful" at a karaoke bar in front of a crowd of well-known neo-Nazis and white supremacists, including Richard Spencer. Richard Spencer, as people might remember, the one that got punched. It was financed by the Regeneries, and I think they were called America First, weren't they, as well? I'm sure his movement was. Can't remember. But anyway, so he was there with Yiannopoulos, and instead of applauding when he finished the song, they all gave Nazi salutes and Sieg Heiled.
Classy.
Yeah. Now, in response, when questioned about this, Yiannopoulos, who was standing right in front of the crowd who were all Sieg Heiling at him, said that he didn't actually see anybody doing Nazi salutes because he had extreme myopia. But according to the bartender who was working at the night, Yiannopoulos, Spencer and their entourage came into the bar and asked to sing karaoke even though it had ended. And as soon as the bartender saw the Nazi salutes, they basically rushed the stage and told them all to leave. At which point they began harassing her, chanting "Trump, Trump, Trump, make America great again." And according to her, Yiannopoulos was the one that was whipping up people to basically abuse her. So one sort of positive thing that happened to Yiannopoulos that particular year, in October of 2017, he married his husband in Hawaii. So good for him. Bizarrely, the same month, he did a series of speeches and came out publicly against the Australian Marriage Law Postal Service, basically, which was to do with gay marriage, saying that it would violate religious freedom. And he also reiterated his belief that homosexuality is a sin, and that anybody that conducts themselves in homosexual relationships would go to hell. He also basically he said, "You don't seem to be disputing the church's teachings on homosexuality. I wouldn't dream of demanding that the church throw away her hard truths just to lie to me in the hopes that I'll feel better about myself." So, a strange and troubled man. Now, in March 2021, Yiannopoulos declared to LifeSite News, because no decent publication would touch him, that he had gone through gay conversion therapy and he was now an ex-gay. And everybody went, fuck off. No one believes that. But that's his story and he's sticking to it. And for a short time, he worked for a really, really tacky, what's that fucking channel where they sell you stuff over the television?
More like QVC?
Yes, that's the one I'm thinking of, QVC, but it was like a Catholic QVC. And there's fabulous footage of him trying to sell these really tacky statuettes of the Virgin Mary. I think they've got like glowing eyes or light up eyes, or they play a song or some shit, or utter tat. And he's desperately trying to sell it like it's the best thing in the world. But the following year, in 2022, he became an unpaid intern for Marjorie Taylor Greene. So Marjorie Taylor Greene has interacted with both Nicholas Fuentes and Milo Yiannopoulos. So she's either very unlucky and stupid, or she's trying to pander to the sort of audience that these people attract, or she believes and agrees with some of the things that these people say. Like that's the only options essentially, and none of them are particularly good. Also that year was when he started working with Kanye West, and this was say 2022, and this was for Ye's 2024 presidential election campaign. Yiannopoulos was the one, as we've said previously, that arranged the November 2022 dinner between Trump, West, Nick Fuentes, and Ali Alexander. And he said that he did this to make Trump's life miserable. He said, I also wanted to send a message to Trump that he has systematically, repeatedly neglected, ignored, abused the people who love him most, the people who put him in office, and that kind of behavior comes back to bite you in the end. And it was shortly after this that he and Nick fell out. You see, in March 2023, so shortly after, well, about 6 months after that, Yiannopoulos decided to publish material on his Telegram channel about Ali Alexander. Ali Alexander was friends with all of them, and he'd worked on the Stop the Steal campaign and the Kanye West campaign. Now, what Yiannopoulos alleged was that Ali Alexander had been propositioning teenage boys for sex and soliciting sexually explicit photographs and videos from them, sometimes just by virtue of them wanting to impress him. And sometimes he was saying things like, I can get you access to certain politicians. I can get you access to Milo and various other people if you send me this picture. So this was very strange. And then in May 2023, Yiannopoulos was rehired by Kanye West to run his campaign. Now, remember what Milo had said before about, well, he said various things, but it said that people that claim to be sexually abused are whinging, and that basically he had no time for these people 20 years later claiming that, oh, I've been abused. And he was very aggressive in his belief that age of consent doesn't necessarily matter, and that it's perfectly okay for older people to go out with young boys and for young boys to be attracted to older men. And then let's not forget that he refused to name names for people that he'd seen drugging and having sex with young boys on boats.
All of the beliefs and thoughts that he made his name off of. Yeah, well, remember I said to put a pin in all of that? Well, because on August the 5th, 2024, Yiannopoulos tweeted out, at 13, I was raped by a priest. His name was Father Michael. He died years ago. I said some stupid shit trying to make sense of it, which was used against me in 2017. The idea that this translates to Milo is a pedo is so warped and dark that anyone who says it is dead to me forever. One of the things that Milo decided to, at the time, Fuentes was being weird with his groypers, as is the norm. This is from a Substack from someone that was called Wonket. At some point in the recent past, Fuentes made a bizarre video about how he and all of the other groypers need to start having sex with human women, even though they're all deeply repulsed by the idea and by women in general, in order to make more white babies. And this is interesting because this is exactly the thing that he fell out with Candace Owens about, that she was saying, why aren't you doing this? Intimating that he might be gay. And he responded by basically saying that, oh, fuck off, Candace, I'm not listening to you, you're a woman. And also implying that her marriage was a sham and she'd done it just to basically get on to her preferred life path. But anyway, this continues. Sadly, this erases the one positive contribution Fuentes has made to society, convincing the worst of all possible men to take themselves out of the sexual marketplace. It is somewhat significant given the core tenet of groyper nonsense has long been not having sex with women. Fuentes previously asserted that it is gay to have sex with women, and even gave the treasurer of the groyper movement the axe for having had a girlfriend in the past, because that was not allowed. Anyway, Yiannopoulos
got wind of that one. And so he decided to issue a challenge to Fuentes. They decided to have what he called a baby off. Yep. Milo decided to have a bet with Nick Fuentes and said, whoever has the most children by a set date in 2027 will have to pay the other one, or the other one will have to pay them $250,000 and admit to being a lesser man on social media.
Okay.
Yes. So he wrote a statement. He said, to whom it may concern, I am publicly challenging Nicholas J. Fuentes to a baby off. I say I will have more natural born offspring by the second quarter of 2027. Here are my conditions.
By the second quarter.
No Dave Rubin style of pay to play, which means no adopting people. Which is you cannot rape. You must succeed in courting a woman and persuading her to breed with you. Children must be conceived naturally as a product of ordinary intercourse and not in vitro fertilization or other artificial methods loathsome to God. In the event of a tie, marriage to the mother shall be the determining factor. The loser shall pay the winner $250,000 and tweet the following: I accept that my adversary is a superior man to me in every way. So this is them sort of bitching on and stuff, because he's revealed this stuff about Ali Alexander, and they started having a go. So in response to the Ali Alexander, and this will make slightly more sense later, because he was trying to hook up with some of Nick's groupers, essentially, Milo tweeted out in December of 2024, the only thing that you've succeeded in 8 years is getting one of your fans raped. To which Nicholas Fuentes clapped back by saying, well, the only thing that you've succeeded at in your entire life is being raped in your fat gay ass. Not the wittiest of responses, which leads me to believe that it probably hit a nerve. Now, strangely, Milo, because they're all fucking edgelords and they're all dickheads and stuff like this. You know, on Twitter, you have a thing written under that's like a brief sort of explanation of who you are. I don't know what it's called, like tagline. Bio. Yeah, or handle or whatever.
No, your handle is your name.
Okay, then the bit. So basically, his handle is bio. Right, your bio. So for a long time, on his bio, his bio was simply, I used to get gang raped by blacks and go back for seconds. He's a class act, is Milo. So anyway, back to the present day, or the recent past. And Milo starts jumping in to defend Candace and starts accusing Nick of being a fed because he wasn't arrested on January the 6th. And he tweets out, the problem with Nick, a personal, not professional, he's a person of exceedingly low moral character. He's a reflexive liar, compulsively cruel and destructive, a betrayer governed by rage and envy. He's also a shadow of his former selves in terms of comedy and intellect. He also tweeted out, it's undeniable that Nick acted on FBI orders on January the 6th and was protected thereafter. I believe he gave audience data to the feds to lift a bank hold. He isn't a regular informant. He isn't regular informant material, too erratic and dishonest, so they dumped him. But they still own his ass harder than Ali did, which is a reference to Ali Alexander. Someone tweeted out, Nick Fuentes on January the 6th, we're taking the capital back. Keep marching, don't relent. Break down the barriers and disregard the police. This capital belongs to us now. How has he not been arrested? And Milo responds, no charges, because Nick was one of the 30 or so confidential informants working for the FBI on January the 6th to entrap Trump voters. His victims were tortured for years in jail. At least 5 are dead. Now, just in the interest of fairness, the FBI have tweeted out that they had no undercover operatives January 6th that day, which is a slightly ridiculous thing to do, because anybody that thinks that they did would just go, well, of course you would say that. So it doesn't really solve anything for anybody. Anyway, Nick responds to this and says, I'll be addressing this allegation on my show tonight at 9 p.m. Central Time, once and for all, putting this accusation to bed with everyone pushing it, receipts incoming. Basically, he does a live, and he explains that he wasn't there, and that actually Milo is the sus one, and that he repeats the thing that there was no FBI agents there, but then he starts tweeting out these so-called receipts, and he tweets one out saying, from Milo, accusing me of being a federal informant after January the 6th. And there's an exchange of tweets, and Nick tweets Milo and says, hey, what did the feds say to you? Apparently Baked Alaska got a visit as well. So the feds have visited Baked Alaska. They've also visited Milo at this point, and Nick Fuentes is aware of this. And Milo responds, lots of Proud Boys are getting them. I think they're trying to keep obvious targets away. I would not serve their cause if it would not serve their cause if Enrique or Gavin or I were killed. It might actually kick off a right-wing riot at last. They want Republicans simmering, not boiling. Just between us, I was given a friendly warning that no law enforcement agency would be able to guarantee my safety. They basically said, we're asking you not to go. If you insist, it may become an instruction. He goes on to say, looks like Enrique just got banned from the entire District of Columbia. So Milo has said that the FBI have turned up and basically said, I won't go on January the 6th if I were you. And if you do go, you might get hurt. And implied that they've sort of threatened him a little bit. They've also turned up at Baked Alaska's house and several Proud Boys houses. And Nick responds, shit, okay, thanks for telling me that. I'll keep it between us. I agree with what you said on Telegram. Something's definitely up. I have a bad feeling about this one. I'm going to go to the Trump rally at the Ellipse and then get out of Dodge. Milo responds, that would be smart. Don't be out all night. Don't be out at night, whatever you do. And honestly, I would just not be out and about. You are recognizable enough now. Rally and fuck off is smart. And Nick says, yup, too much funny business going on to play around. Milo says, I've heard of 5 Proud Boys so far who got visits from the feds this morning. Mostly New York guys who weren't home or are already left for DC, who had it on their Ring cameras or their wives answered. Nick says, do you know if the feds had a similar message for them? I'm asking, but don't feel left out, Nick. He doesn't say Nick, he just says, don't feel left out. Nick says, I'm happy to be left out because he hasn't been visited by the FBI. And Milo ends the exchange with a laugh my ass off. So at this point, they're friends, basically. But a lot of people pointed out that doesn't actually make Nick look better. Because he said, I can't possibly be a Fed because here's me asking about Milo if the FBI had turned up and questioned him and various other people. To which quite a lot of people turned around and went, hang on, Nick, does that mean that you spoke to Milo, who told you that the feds had advised you not to go, and then you turned up and encouraged people to break through police barriers and go to the Capitol building? That makes it look worse. To which there was no real response other than, yeah, I'm not a Fed. Now, Milo also tweeted out something else, which was basically a public... he tweets out, here's me on Parler on January the 5th, telling people not to go to DC. I wish more had listened instead of following Nick's incitement to riot. And basically, this is a Parler post from January the 5th that says, just had a knock on the door. I won't be going to DC. Whatever operation they've got running to fuck with patriots, it's massive and they aren't playing around. Take care, everyone. So, yeah, so Nick actually revealed that he was warned that January 6th was a setup, or it was intimated to him that January 6th was a setup, and he still went and he still encouraged people to storm the Capitol. So that really somewhat backfired to him. Milo then starts going on about, hey, remember when Nick had his money frozen by the DOJ? Ask him how he got them to unfreeze it. Answer, he became an informant. Then ask when it was unfrozen. Ask for proof, because he was lying to his fans every day, taking cash off teams, claiming his account was frozen 6 months after he got it back. Now, if we remember, he then goes on to say, he was never on the no-fly list. That was a lie. Excuse me. Ask to see proof. He isn't debanked. I've known him for years, and he's always had a debit and credit card from big retail banks. Ask for proof. He has a perfectly nice life with a few problems he created for himself. Boo-hoo. Nick had trouble getting around for a while, not because of his politics, but because he verbally assaulted a stewardess. I hate the uppity bitches too, but the point is Nick lied about the reason he was having difficulty flying certain airlines, like he lies about everything. And this is apparently true. So, as we've previously mentioned, he claimed that it was political motivation for being put on a no-fly list and having his bank account frozen. And actually what it was that he threatened to strangle a stewardess, and his bank account was very, very briefly frozen because he received a payment of more than $500,000 from a mysterious French crypto guy who was terminally ill. And that's a sort of standard thing to do so that they can check it out, see where it's come from, make sure it's legitimate, make sure it's not the proceeds of crime or some sort of laundering operation. Milo then hits Nick with a bit of a sort of gut punch, really. He says, my favorite Nick story is about how he was about to sell out his entire fan base, literally to the Jews. But he fucked up the deal because he couldn't resist tipping off the press to boast before the deal was signed. Childish incontinence cost him millions. Heartbreaking. I'm like, what on earth is this all about? And there's a link to a story from this is an organization called mansworldmag.org or .com. I can't remember. So yeah, in fairness, it's probably not the most reliable. It's certainly not the Times or whatever. However, allegedly, according to this particular website and Milo Yiannopoulos, in October, Nick Fuentes met Jonathan Strickland from Pale Horse Strategies, a think tank funded by Texan billionaires Farris and Dan Wilkes, who fund Zionist neoconservatives such as the Daily Wire's Ben Shapiro and Dennis Prager. The Wilkes brothers are the Texas oil people, the guys that basically gave Ben Shapiro, Candace Owens, and various other people their starts. As I say, they're behind the Daily Wire and Prager U. The Wilkes brothers' long-running devotion to Israel and ties to the permanent war lobby in Washington are at stark odds with Fuentes' anti-Semitic nationalism. The meeting was thought by his allies to be his last hope of securing major backing, but instead of pitching himself as a media personality, Fuentes asked how much Wilkes would pay for America First's data. 6 hours later, terms were agreed, but the deal fell apart dramatically when it was discovered that Fuentes secretly tipped off local newspapers in the hopes of a photo op, and there are no plans to revive the Scuttle talks. So just to explain what happened there, he went to the Wilkes brothers, who essentially, there was this think tank called Pale Horse Strategies, so they wanted a degree of separation between them and Nick, because they like what Nick says, but they cannot be publicly associated with him because he's a Nazi. And so they were going to give him some funding. They were going to give him a huge amount of funding. Exactly what was going to be done was not entirely clear. And Nick decided to... the first thing is that should be a big red flag to his fans, because it shows that he's willing to go against his fundamental principles. But he fucked up because he also shows that he doesn't really think much of his followers as well, because he allegedly said, that's wicked, let's do all that. By the way, would you like all the personal data that I've acquired from people that have sent me money, people who have registered, people who are on our Discord, stuff like that, all his fans? How much would you pay us for all their data? Which is if that was in the UK, that would be a massive breach of GDPR laws, because essentially what you're doing is something that they've not agreed to with that data. You're not using it for the primary purpose. You're using it for another purpose, which is marketing or God knows what. Data analysis is essentially what it's going to be used for. And he offered to sell it. Now, apparently everything was all hunky-dory until Nick was photographed by journalists from the Texas Tribune newspaper when he entered the building. And this was the houses, the place where Pale Horse Strategies was. Essentially, the guy that was running it was a guy called Jonathan Strickland, who was the previous president of the Wilkes-funded PAC, Defend Texas Liberty. And you'll never guess who else's offices were in that particular building.
The Heritage Foundation?
No, not quite. Kyle Rittenhouse. Why Kyle Rittenhouse has got an office, I've got absolutely no idea. Kyle Rittenhouse is the lad that took a gun across state borders and ended up shooting 3 people, killing one of them or 2 of them, I forget. But yeah, despicable piece of shit. I hope he gets the fleshing disease in his penis. So Fuentes is notorious to the terminally online, but not nearly famous enough that his movements attracted real time by journalists. So how did the Tribune know where to send their man? And why was there a photographer anywhere near the building in the first place? According to this blog, because Fuentes is unable to resist gloating before the deal was even signed. He had secretly set it up, pressuring junior Pale Horse staffers to make calls to local newspapers and supposedly making a few himself. Pale Horse staff didn't tell their boss, hoping collectively that the Tribune wouldn't be interested, but the paper turned out to be very interested. The photos they published showed Fuentes and Strickland deep in conversation, which was a catastrophic misjudgment by Fuentes that triggered a statewide crisis in the Republican Party. The Texas GOP was paralyzed by moral panic about white supremacist infiltrators. The drama lasted for weeks and led to several high-level resignations. Carl Rittenhouse apparently disavowed Nick Fuentes. A man that murdered a couple of people thought that Nick Fuentes was beyond the pale for him. So Farris Wilkes had seen enough and decided to pull the plug on the deal. Meanwhile, Rinaldi, who was the lawyer involved in setting up the deal, who served until recently as Texas GOP chair, he denied meeting Fuentes before reassuring colleagues that he would not seek re-election. So it caused a huge amount of problems, and Strickland was forced to leave Pale Horse and surrender his ownership stake. So Nick was this close to being obscenely wealthy. I mean, it would involve basically working with people who are very, very pro-Israel, which is apparently completely against his entire ideology. And he did offer to sell all of his loyal followers' data, potentially illegally. But, you know, fuck them. But this is another perfect example about how these people don't give a shit. They absolutely don't give a shit. They're all in it for themselves. And it's just grubby. Milo goes on. I recommend looking over Nick's account for evidence of botting, paid engagement, etc. over the past year. You may be the only person who can figure out who is pulling the strings of this nasty little weirdo. Maybe it's still his best mate, the banned paedophile Ali Alexander. Somebody in the middle of this asks Milo why he wrote all those messages about Candace Owens' husband potentially being closeted gay and her marriage being a sham where she is the beard to cover for him. So I said, Nero, why did you write these messages to Candace? Nero is his handle. You see, I'm down. I'm learning. I'm getting all the lingo. So Milo said in response to that, I remember he's not gay anymore. He said, I'm hoity-toity. When I have a big gay hissy fit, the thesaurus comes out. Nick is a bossy bottom from the shit part of town. He has toys out of the stroller, chimp out tantrums. He's a very different flavour of queen and ex-queen, intimating that he is no longer gay, but that Nick definitely is, according to Milo. Nick, he follows up by saying, Nick is a homosexual. Don't take it out on us. And that was actually in response to Owen Benjamin, who for some reason got involved as well. He hates everybody. Owen Benjamin's the sort of failed comedian that went insane after having a pot brownie or sweet on Joe Rogan's show, or was it Joey Diaz's show? And he's never been the same since. Someone basically called Milo an F slur, and he responds by saying, and this is someone that's sticking up for Nick, and Milo responds by saying, out of interest, what is the plan for when Nick gets caught with a dude, or more likely just snaps and admits it? Are you all going to shrug and just move on? And then he posts a picture of Nick with a bloke called Catboy Cammy. And the picture has Nick looking adoringly at Catboy Cammy, and they're on essentially a date. And the original picture says, this is a reminder that the homosexual this is the homosexual Mexican leader of America First. And Milo quote tweets this and puts out and writes stomach churning. Do you know what a catboy is?
Yes.
And it's not a reference to Train Spotting, like Begbie calls I can't remember his fucking name, the main character calls him Catboy all the time. And but yeah, so a catboy is a sort of bizarre mashing together of furry and internet sort of culture mixed with hardcore Nazism. So this is very strange. So this guy, Catboy Cammy, is, as far as I'm aware, an openly homosexual guy, likes to dress up like a cat, but he also is very, very fond of being alt-right and being very, very sort of aggressive with all of this. And this guy basically sort of was a bit of an internet personality, and he ended up making connections with all sorts of people, including Milo Yiannopoulos, who's basically saying, "Oh, this is disgusting that Nick would hang out with this guy." He was also friends with Richard Spencer and Baked Alaska. So all of these people knew who this Catboy Cammy guy was. And so what happened was, in January 2020, Fuentes went out on what was called an all-day-long live stream date with Catboy Cammy, and this caused a bit of a furore within Nick's fans, because people started to say that he seemed to be really, really enjoying this date, and a lot of people started to speculate on Fuentes' sexuality because of this. Now, I'm not daft. I understand that that's an edgelordy type thing to do, to pretend to be gay, and you know, they're into that sort of internet culture and stuff like that. So who knows? And frankly, who cares? It's just hilarious that all these people are wrapping themselves up in these knots, essentially. But people started to sort of have a bit of a hack around, and some leaked messages from Fuentes' Discord chat room showed him in 2020 fantasizing about a Catboy mud fight and asking people to collect more local catboys for his harem. He also added that the America First meetup will be a Catboy death match. Again, like, this could have been a joke, who knows? But a lot of people took this to be an indication that Nick Fuentes was potentially hiding things about his personality and maybe even projecting things. And if that was the case, you know, people were saying, well, it certainly fits a certain stereotype, but who knows? Screenshots that were leaked from the chat room, which was named Catboys, spelt BOIS, contained huge amounts of gay Catboy-themed cartoons. Again, this might have all been a joke, it might have all been a gag or whatever, but there's a huge a lot of it. But Nick was quiet about this for a long time, but in 2022 he actually addressed the Catboy Cammy controversy, and he cleared absolutely everything up by saying that men can't actually have sex because it's just friction. So that cleared absolutely everything up, and everything was fine for a little bit until people discovered that Nick had several Instagram accounts. One was going by the name Boss Baby Incel 2. And several observers noticed that he was following what could be described as gay accounts, essentially modeling accounts for very muscular, buff young men who often appeared in various states of undress and with oiled up torsos. This was never really explained. In 2022, a top officer of Fuentes America First Foundation, a chap called Jaden McNeil, deserted him alongside some computer technicians. Now, you should really take this with a massive grain of salt, but because he claimed that he'd left the Groypers because Fuentes had previously pressured him not to get a girlfriend, and even gone so far as to regularly inspect a couch and a bed that McNeil had slept on, searching for semen stains using a black light. McNeil also claimed Nick doesn't really want a mainstream political movement anymore. He just wants a hardcore cult of followers. It's not just a death cult, it's a homosexual death cult. Now, Fuentes went on to say this in his defense, again, clearing absolutely everything up. If we're really being honest, never having a girlfriend, never having sex with a woman really makes you more heterosexual, because honestly, dating women is gay. Men having sex with women is gay.
He's doing this one again. Okay.
Yeah. In 2022, he was streaming online from his phone, and he left a few of his browser windows briefly in view. And one of them was identified by eagle-eyed viewers, and the source was looked up. It was a YouTube video titled T-Girl Sucking a Femboy's Dick and Then He Jerks Until Cum. For some reason, Nick had that video open in a tab on his phone. And in May 20...
Can't be YouTube, could it? You just you said to say YouTube? It's got to be like Pornhub or something like that.
Well, maybe. But I don't know. Sometimes like videos can sneak on YouTube. Like there was a time where people were sharing around like those old sort of videos. What was it that was like really popular for a time? For some reason, it sort of missed the algorithm. You know, those old videos that were like sort of sex. They'll teach you how to the art of making love and all of those types of videos that you used to get. That used to be sold in newsagents and things like that. Some of those appeared on YouTube. So who knows? But also in May of 2024, and I remember when this happened, Nick was doing a live stream. He believed that the live stream had ended. And then all of a sudden, well, not all of a sudden, about 30 seconds after he thought that the live stream had ended, gay pornography began playing on the stream. Now, to the uninitiated, it looked like Nick had thought that the stream had finished and so had started watching gay pornography. But that can't be true, because that would be completely against the public image that Nick presents. And he came out with a far more plausible explanation than him getting caught watching gay porn. Do you know what he said was the explanation for the gay porn being on his stream?
His stream was hacked.
Yes. Do you know who by?
Milo.
The IDF. It was Israel. It was Israel, you see. Israel putting gay porn on Nick Fuentes' computer and not doing it whilst his stream was going, right? They were clever enough to wait until he thought that he'd stopped streaming and then put it up briefly, turning it off when he realized that he was still streaming. Those crafty sods. But that perfectly explains it to me, and I have no further questions about that. In 2025, a leaked explicit video went all over the internet. Do you know who Destiny is?
Yeah.
Yeah, Destiny,
left wing or a centrist.
Streamer. Yeah. He used to be a gamer and stuff like that. There was a video that came out. Destiny is famously bisexual. This video came out of two men having sex. One that looked very much like Destiny, and another person that looked incredibly much like Nick Fuentes. Now, obviously, Nick Fuentes denied that it was him. And I'll just read from this article. A leaked explicit video allegedly featuring streamer Destiny and far-right commentator Nick Fuentes has ignited widespread speculation online. The recently leaked video seemed to depict a man who looked like Destiny having sex with another man. People on social media conjectured that Fuentes may be the second person. After a video of Fuentes appeared as a guest on Destiny's channel in August 2022, the debate grew more intense. Fuentes alluded to their mutual willingness to have sex with males during the stream. Destiny, whose real name is Stephen Kenneth Bonnell, responded to the accusations on social media. He asserted that the video was not authentic and ascribed its distribution to a friend's hacked account. Destiny did not affirm or refute any more information, but stated, "I think a friend of mine's account ended up getting compromised." It's almost certainly not Nick Fuentes in the video, but it's hilarious. So Milo starts to go on again. People are saying that, okay, it's just a joke. You don't get it. This is internet culture. This is just internet culture. Everyone's being edgy. And Milo responds saying, "Except, sweetie, that man is on camera 40 times approving of child molestation in various states of joking, and didn't just cover, but attacked the victims of a gay black paedophile whose youngest victim was 9. Hardly a random insult. Nick is weird and he's into something weird." Now, again, he's referring to Ali Alexander there. Now, I looked and I cannot find any reference to a 9-year-old. So I don't know what that is about, but that is what Milo said. And then he posts pictures of various pictures of Nick stood next to Ali Alexander on various demonstrations and marches. And he says, "It's romantic in a way, isn't it? Co-parenting a protest bullhorn with your gay paedophile best friends. Do you think they share toothbrushes?" Now, the interesting thing about both of these people, all of these people flinging gay as if it's an insult, is that it comes across very much as projection. It also comes across as obvious homophobia. And there is a concept which is called internalized homophobia. And I looked this up. There's a place called the Rainbow Project that deals with LGBT sort of issues and stuff like that. And it has certain things. It says that internalized homophobia and oppression happens to gay, lesbian, and bisexual people, also to heterosexuals. But it's people who have learned and been taught that heterosexuality is the norm and correct way to be. Internalized homophobia manifests itself in various ways that can be linked to mental health. And it goes on to list some examples. Now, it is a bit of a stereotype, but there's this idea that people who are aggressively homophobic are essentially overcompensating for their shame for their own potentially homosexual feelings. There have been certain studies have done. There was one that I read that basically it was quite like, what it did was it hooked people's penises up to essentially like almost lie detector machines and showed them gay porn. And this study showed that basically the erection response was far, far stronger in these are all supposedly heterosexual men that were being tested. And people that essentially were aroused by watching gay pornography, far more came from the homophobic group than the not homophobic group. So who knows? It is a stereotype, but stereotypes are not, have to begin somewhere. Now, what the Rainbow Project says is that examples of behavior that might indicate internalized homophobia, and I will reiterate, this doesn't necessarily mean that this is a denial of your sexual orientation, but it might be. So internalized homophobia manifests itself in varying ways that could be linked to mental health. Examples include denial of your sexual orientation to yourself and others. Well, has Nick done that? Has Milo done that? Both of them have done that. We've seen Nick denying being gay a lot of the time. Have you made any attempts to alter or change your sexual orientation? Has Nick? I don't know. Who can say? He's got this weird sort of thing about women and how it's actually more gay to have sex with women. Who knows? Feelings that you're never good enough. He literally has people pledge allegiance to him. That seems pretty insecure to me. Engaging in obsessive thinking and or compulsive behaviors, often about homosexual people. Would you say that was representative of Nick's output? Yes. Underachievement or even overachievement as a bid for acceptance. He's the leader of the gropers. Low self-esteem, negative body image. Well, he hates his own lineage. He also must hate his own parents because his own parents are a mixed race marriage and he thinks that that's wrong. So contempt for the more open or obvious members of the LGBT community. Well, that's definitely, yeah. Contempt for those at the earlier stages of the coming out process. Yes, we've seen that. Denial that homophobia or sexism are serious social problems. I think that's fair to say that Nick would deny that both of those are serious social problems. Contempt for those who are not like ourselves, or contempt for those that seem like ourselves, sometimes distancing by engaging in homophobic behaviors, ridicule, harassment, verbal or physical attacks on LGBT people. Yes, definitely done that. Projection of prejudice onto another target. Yeah, I would say so. Becoming psychologically abused or abusive, or remaining in an abusive relationship. He bullies his close followers. He bullies his followers on his stream. Attempts to pass as a heterosexual, sometimes marrying someone to the other sex to gain social approval or in hope of being cured. Well, he keeps talking about, I want to marry a 16-year-old girl. I want the girl to shut up and do this and blah, blah, blah. Increased fear and withdrawal from friends and relatives. He literally describes himself as an incel. Shame or depression, defensiveness, anger or bitterness. Have we ever seen anything that would suggest that Nick was angry or bitter? Yes.
Never.
School truancy or dropping out of school. Also work absenteeism or reduced productivity. He's never had a proper job and he dropped out of school. Continual self-monitoring of one's behaviors, mannerisms, and beliefs. Well, they're banned from going out with girls. They're banned from masturbating. I'd say that would definitely be something that they did. Using humor and clowning as a way of acting out society's negative stereotypes. Well, I think that's definitely true. Mistrust and destructive criticism of LGBT community leaders. Yep. Reluctance to be around or have concern for children for fear of being seen as a paedophile. I don't know about that, but there's loads of paedophile stuff in Groper chats. That's something that they've constantly been criticized for. Some people will say that it's all just edgelord stuff, but you know what? Using child porn for edgelord stuff is not on. Conflicts with the law. Well, he's currently on bail for pepper spraying a woman. Unsafe sexual practices and destructive risk-taking behaviors, including risk for HIV and other STIs. Well, I think that's one where we can safely say no. Separating sex and love or fear of intimacy, sometimes lack of sexual drive or celibacy. He's literally a celibate, and he says that sex is gay and he doesn't connect it to love at all. So I'd say yes for that. Substance abuse, including drink and drugs. No, I don't think he does that. I don't think that's fair, although Milo certainly does. 25, thinking about suicide, attempting suicide, or death by suicide. Well, the night is still young. So, of 25 potential indicators of internalized homophobia, there were 3 that couldn't be applied to Nick Fuentes. What does that mean? Who could say? So, who is Ali Alexander? Well, as we said before, in 2023, Milo Yiannopoulos, he decided to defect from Fuentes and disinvolve himself with the Kanye West debacle. And he unleashed allegations supported by interviews with 2 accusers and text messages, screenshots, and various other evidence that Ali Alexander, a convicted felon, he pled guilty to felony property theft in 2007 and felony credit card abuse in 2008. Back when he was using his legal name. Do you know what Ali Alexander's legal name is?
Alex Ali.
No, it's far more hilarious than that. This is a man that is beloved by the right wing, particularly by people who are anti-Islam, and despite the fact that he's better than that. His real name, I swear to God, his real name is Ali Akbar. Fucking hell, that is so incredible. He's also a self-proclaimed time traveler. Anyway,
whoa! Don't you skip past that.
He said this on a podcast. He said, "What if I told you that all of us are capable of time traveling? Well, not all of us, because you're not smart enough. But what if I told you there are a lot of people who are capable of time traveling? They just don't know it. What if I told you that time traveling is easier than you think? It requires a lot of discipline and no machines. What if I told you that the reason why the New World Order wants you to focus on stories about machines is they don't want you to know that everyone has access to time travel? Then what if I told you that the way that those of us who fight is we're each pulling from time itself? It's, of course, the Jews' time travel. That's what makes apostasy so great. What if I told you that I could prove that I've time traveled before? So he's a time traveler and he's figured out he can do this. He's done it before. It's a secret that only the Jews know. But Ali Alexander has somehow figured it out. Anyway, so despite being named Ali Akbar, having numerous felonies on his record, he was embraced very much by the GOP and the right wing. And then, unfortunately, he sent sexual imagery and solicited sexual pictures from 2 teenage boys. And when he was discovered, he responded by saying he was so sorry, this is far too gay, I am battling same-sex attraction, which some took to be not taking it entirely seriously. Now, according to Milo, Nick Fuentes had known about this sort of thing for a long time. He's known Ali Alexander for a while, and the evidence that Milo says that he sort of let them get away with this was that I believe in 2022, Milo sent Nick Fuentes a text message warning Nick that Ali Alexander wants to come to your events to have sex with underage boys. And therefore, Nick should have done something about it. And therefore. Now, can you tell what... I'm not positive about this, but what I think is actually like where they've shot themselves in the foot there somewhat. Well, it shows that Milo knew about it as well. And that was certainly before... he revealed it to the general public. So anyway, in 2017, Alexander had been an ardent Trump supporter with a passion for social media trash talking. He became the protege of figures like Roger Stone and Alex Jones. And he also knocked about with anti-Muslim activist Laura Loomer. And it was them that promoted the idea that Ilhan Omar, the U.S. representative for Minnesota, who is Somali American, that she had married her brother in order to grant him U.S. citizenship, which is completely not true. In 2020, Alexander formed Stop the Steal, which is a campaign promoting the idea that widespread electoral fraud occurred in the 2020 election to deny Donald Trump victory over Biden, which again is completely not true. He also started a conspiracy theory called Maiden Gate. Have you heard of this? I've not heard of this before.
No.
It's the idea that people were voting twice, by voting in one state with their married name and in one state by their maiden name.
Their maiden name. Wow.
Yeah, yeah. Now, the flaw in that is that basically there's no evidence to support it. And also that's not how the voting registration works. But, you know, he was also there on January the 6th, leading chants of victory or death. And at 4:30 on January the 6th, which is about 2 hours after the rioters entered the Capitol building, he posted a video of himself looking out on the crowd, to which he said, "I don't disavow this. I do not denounce this." Now, Marjorie Taylor Greene, when she heard this from Milo, she obviously previously worked with Fuentes and Milo, she called for an FBI probe into Ali Alexander, and she claimed, "This is disgusting textbook predation of underage boys, and Nick Fuentes was in on it." So, as of April 2023, the Jonestown, Colorado police were indeed investigating allegations about Alexander. In response to the Ali Alexander incident, Fuentes disavowed, he took a long time, but he then disavowed Ali Alexander, but he didn't do it in a particularly convincing way. He said, "If you're flirting with adult gay men because you think it's going to land you a job, you know full well what you're doing and it's gross. Sorry, but even at 15, I would never have sent nudes to an adult gay man. The real victim in this entire saga is me. Sounds like everybody involved got what they wanted, except me, the incel, who is now somehow being blamed for things that I had nothing to do with." And this was the time in 2023 where Fuentes said that him being just under 30 years old, his ideal wife would be 16, which is right when the milk is good. And I want to start drinking that milk. If I'm 30 and she's 16, a 14-year age difference. When I'm 50, she'll be 36. When I'm 40, she'll be 26. And now we're talking. Now we're cooking with gas. And the other reason that he wanted a teenage wife is because he said that she would have a fertile womb with an innocent, childlike spirit. September 2023, Baked Alaska publicly denounced Fuentes. And this was for his association with Ali Alexander, but also he started noticing that Nick keeps making comments about kids. Keeps making all these, he says they're edgy jokes and stuff like that, but there's only so many comments about minors that you can say. Baked Alaska wrote in the video clip, wrote and also recorded a video clip. Nick Fuentes says here in his own words that he's not against grooming underage children. This is not out of context. This is what he actually believes. This is legit pedophilia, and exactly why I publicly said I cannot support Nick anymore. And this is because he's essentially blamed two things. One, he blamed the two boys that Ali Alexander approached for being stupid and for trying to get something out of it. Basically, like, you know, trying to get pay for play, if you know what I mean. But the other thing was that he dismissed it all as flirting. He said that Ali Alexander was just flirting with these kids. Two things, right? Okay, as an adult, you can't flirt with kids. You can only groom kids. It's just as straightforward as that. And you're grooming them for sex. So, yeah, they're underage. It's very, very grim. The Daily Beast reported in April of 2023, Fuentes is faking backlash from his own supporters over whether he ignored warnings that Alexander, his friend and ally, was allegedly soliciting nude pictures from young men within Fuentes' movement. I apologize for any inappropriate messages sent over the year, Alexander wrote, adding later, when I've flirted or others have flirted with me, I've flexed my credentials or dropped corny pickup lines. Other times I've been careless and should have qualified those coming to me. Coming to me with identities during flirtatious banter at the start. There's a sick in there because he miswrote that. In his statement, he claimed that he'd also been targeted by false accusations and edited screenshots of his message, but declined to point out which ones were fake. And that was just utter bullshit because like people have seen them on people's phones. Now, rumors about Alexander's alleged sexual behavior towards younger men have circulated in conservative online circles since 2015. So everybody involved with this, Alex Jones worked with Ali Alexander, Roger Stone worked with Ali Alexander, Marjorie Taylor Greene worked with Ali Alexander, Candace Owens, I believe, worked with Ali Alexander, Yiannopoulos definitely worked with Ali Alexander, Baked Alaska worked with Ali Alexander, and Nick Fuentes worked with Ali Alexander for at least 7 years after the first rumors of his sexual behavior towards young men started circulating. The article goes on. But they reached a new level late last month after Milo Yiannopoulos, the controversial British provocateur and one-time Ali Alexander ally, turned on Alexander after Alexander and Fuentes pushed him out of a potentially lucrative position in Kanye West's presidential campaign. So why has this all come out? Because Milo felt slighted. Not because he cares. He'd obviously known about this for a long time. He sent that message to Nick saying he's coming to your events to have sex with young boys. Right? Apparently this was all well known since 2015. He knew these young boys. He knew the lads, which we'll come on to in a minute, and knew what had happened with Ali Alexander, but he didn't really care about that until they cut off his access to Kanye West, which, again, they're all just scum. So Yiannopoulos started releasing interview videos and other evidence meant to prove that Alexander sexually propositioned both adult men in their 20s and at least both adult men in their 20s and at least 2 teenagers. Yiannopoulos claims he's releasing the videos against Alexander because Alexander dropped Yiannopoulos' name to entice young men. One screenshot purports to show Alexander dangling the prospect of meeting with Yiannopoulos to a teenage boy. In 2017, Aidan Duncan, a 15-year-old boy in Colorado interested in right-wing politics, sent Alexander nude pictures after the MAGA activist asked for them, according to an account Duncan gave in a March 2023 podcast appearance. At the time, Ali Alexander was 32. And he offered this 15-year-old boy access to his political network if he would send him pictures of his penis. Alexander had, this was in 2017. This didn't come out until, so when did everyone find out about this? When did Milo find out about that? Alexander had grown frustrated by May 2019, claiming that the still underage Duncan wouldn't send him, and I quote, any good jack. You don't even send me videos anymore, Alexander wrote, according to the message. No good jack-off material. You don't even want to be my side piece. A day later, he asked Duncan, who was, what would he be, for 17 at the time, to come to Texas for a week to work as his intern. Duncan, who is now 21, since become a relatively high-profile member of Fuentes' racist America First movement, going by the name Smiley. On Spencer's podcast, Duncan said he believed Fuentes knew about the rumors about Alexander's alleged solicitation of nude photos. I think Nick is 100% aware, Duncan said on the podcast. Duncan posted a statement on Twitter about his communications with Ali Alexander. When I was 15, I was naive and desperate. I thought I had no choice but to cooperate with inappropriate and humiliating requests if I wanted to make it in politics. I figured that was just the nature of the game. Alexander also started messaging 17-year-old Lance Johnston in the summer of 2019, according to Johnston. In July 2019, in what Johnston claims was the night of the White House social media summit, where Trump feted Alexander and other conservatives as victims of online censorship, the 34-year-old Alexander used the eggplant emoji to ask a teenager for a picture of his penis, according to a screenshot. Show me your eggplant emoji, Alexander wrote, according to the messages. What's that? 17-year-old Johnston said. Oh my God, "Your dick," Alexander wrote back. Now, Johnston, and this was apparently, say, whether he was at the White House at the time, we don't know, but he'd definitely been at the White House speaking to and being championed by Donald Trump that evening. So Johnston says he refused and quickly blocked Alexander, but he took a screenshot of the exchange, but he was fearful of raising the issue more broadly on the far right. A friend of Johnston's publicized the screenshot, which began circulating in conservative circles. Alexander took to a video live stream to defend himself. "You can have any conversations you want with someone who's 17, Alexander said to defend himself. And that's when Johnston claims that Nick Fuentes, got in touch with this 17-year-old lad and asked him to say in a text message to Ali Alexander that the screenshot had been doctored and to apologize. So Nick Fuentes asked a 17-year-old boy to basically say that he'd made up the allegations that this 33-year-old man had asked him for pictures of his penis. And Nick Fuentes, because this 33-year-old man who'd been asking children essentially for pictures of their genitals, was his friend. And so Nick asked one of these children who had been solicited for sexual material to lie and basically get his friend off the hook. Nick personally asked me to apologize to Ali for supposedly faking the messages, Johnston said. But Johnson insists the eggplant screenshot is legitimate. In exchange for disowning the eggplant exchange, according to Johnson, Fuentes and Alexander offered to get him a job in politics. Now, Nick Fuentes denies Johnson claims, and he emailed the Daily Beast to say this. "I never offered Lance Johnson a job, nor did I urge him to disavow the shot," Fuentes wrote. Alexander, who has described his ethnicity as half black and half Arab and says he's bisexual, might seem like an unusual ally for the avowedly racist and homophobic America First movement led by Fuentes. But Fuentes, at the time, a 24-year-old who marched at the white supremacist rally in Charlottesville with a long history of racist, anti-Semitic and sexist remarks, has appeared frequently with Ali Alexander at events like the Stop the Steal rally in Georgia in 2020. In text messages reviewed by the Daily Beast, Yiannopoulos warned Fuentes in broad terms about his ally's reputation. "Alexander wants to come to your events to have sex with underage boys," Yiannopoulos wrote in a January 2022 text to Fuentes. Snap out of it. So it was January 2022 that Milo was warning about Ali Alexander. So what's that? Was before they went to the White House with Ye? So Milo was perfectly happy to ignore this. If this is all true, he was as happy to ignore it as Nick was. Until he was slighted because they dropped him from the Kanye West presidential campaign. And then as an act of revenge, he tried to destroy Ali Alexander's reputation. Now, don't get me wrong. What he did was despicable and his reputation deserves to be destroyed. But it would appear that if the rumors are to believe, Nick sat on this for a long time and Milo, almost by his own admission, sat on this for a long time. These people are fucking just despicable. As the allegations mounted against Alexander over the weekend, Fuentes said that he disavowed Alexander's actions and called them gross, but accused Yiannopoulos of sitting on the claims until he could get them to use revenge on his rivals for the West campaign, which is absolutely true. But he told you about it a year ago. So you can't say he didn't tell you. He also blamed the two children, Duncan and Johnston, for flirting with Alexander to advance their careers. Duncan and Lance were willing to go along flirting with Ali to varying degrees without any protest because they thought it would advance their political careers. If you're flirting with adult gay men because you think that it's going to land you a job, you know full well what you're doing and it's gross. Sorry, but even at 15, I would never have sent nudes to an adult gay man. There's something wrong there. Fuentes wrote two long explanations. He said, the next shoe to drop from Nero and Dr. John, which they've been hyping up, is for Lance Johnson. He called me the day after the Ye Alex Jones interview begging for a job on the Ye campaign. Lance has screenshots from 5 or 6 years ago of Ali asking him for a dick pic when he was 17. In December 2022, Milo promised Lance that if he published a screenshot, that he would get him a job on the campaign. Once Lance realized Milo had been fired, he tried to extort Ali into getting him a job on the campaign by promising not to publish it. Lance called me to confirm Milo had been fired, and he asked me to give him a job. I said no. Ali and Lance have talked and hung out several times since their initial interaction, and have been on good terms. But since Lance is now living with his parents, working out at a Hobby Lobby in North Texas, he thinks running this Me Too scam will get him some clout. It doesn't matter if they've talked and hung out several times since their initial interaction. Your 31-year-old friend asked a 15-year-old boy for pictures of his penis. Even if they did use that to advance their career, that doesn't excuse the man in his 30s requesting dick pics from teenagers, using his authority and his ability to gain access to political figures in order to coerce them. Nick goes on, in both cases, Smiley and Lance were willing to go along flirting with Ali without any protest because they thought it would advance their political careers. If you're flirting with adult gay men because you think it's going to land you a job, you know full well that what you're doing is gross. Sorry, but even at 15, I would never send any news to an adult gay man. There's something wrong there. Both of them also have in common that they remained in contact with Ali for years after the fact, well into adulthood. Why was Smiley asking Ali if he would be at AFPAC or Atlanta Stop the Steal? Why is Lance inviting Ali to after parties at a bar in Fort Worth in CPAC in 2021? Why is he playing Let's Make a Deal with Ali as recently as December? In both cases, it was also gross for Ali to flirt with or solicit pictures from teenage boys. It goes without saying that as an adult, you shouldn't be gay and you shouldn't be engaging in quid pro quo with teenagers. And an adult has more responsibility than a teenager. That behavior is wrong, obviously. Now the poor decisions of accused and accused, opportunists on both sides are being used by the ultimate dirtbag Milo to try and impugn my reputation in this ongoing vendetta against me. If Lance or Smiley or Milo or anybody had these concerns about predation, they surely wouldn't have waited years to go forward with their evidence. For outside observers, it's about ethical conduct, but for the actors involved, it's all politics. He also defended his association with Ali Alexander on his show. Nick said, building a massive movement politically to take over the country, that involves a great deal of associations. Sometimes they're not all good. It's as simple as that. If you have a problem with that, well, you try and build something. That's what I would say. Are countries of movements and things going to be ground to pieces because of bad faith attacks over sexual impropriety? If we're talking about rape, murder, fine. But we're talking about flirting. Give me a fucking break. Honestly, yeah, no, that is not a good look. But that's how I feel about it. To tell you the truth, that's how it's going to be. They think this is the silver bullet, but what? This guy flirted with people who were 15. Yeah, that's gross. You know, that's fucking gross. It's gross because it's gay and it goes against the age. So these not really grasping what's wrong with this, is he? That seems to be the problem. But it's also seems to be a bit worse than that because Milo posted an account called Open Secret, and it's a video, and Open Secret tweets out description: November the 15th 2020 at the Million MAGA March, Nick Fuentes is told by a teenage fan that Elijah Schaffer and Ali Alexander separately attempted to ply him with alcohol for sex. After being told that Ali Alexander is a paedophile, Fuentes remarks, how do people not know about this? This is in 2020. So Fuentes is approached by a teenage fan who's approximately like 18 or 19. And Nick Fuentes thinks that for a second he spotted this guy called Elijah Schaffer, who's another far-right guy that turned out to be gay. And he says, is that Elijah Schaffer? No, it's not him. And the teen fan says to Fuentes, Schaffer was so gay for me. He attempted to buy me alcohol. He was so gay for me and he tried to get me drunk at CPAC. And Fuentes replies, oh, he's horrible. And the teenagers tells Nick Fuentes, he says, I went up to Owen Schroyer and I told him that, why do you keep working with Ali Alexander? Ali Alexander's a known paedophile. And Schroyer apparently said to this teenager, why does everyone keep saying that? Now, by the way, this is 3 years before Ali Alexander would appear with Kanye West on InfoWars. So Schroyer's been told this in 2020. Nick's been told this in 2020. Apparently, it's sort of well known because that's what this teenage fan's saying. Schroyer said that basically he'd heard this, but he didn't really know anything about it, and he has nothing to do with booking people on InfoWars anyway. So he just sort of like says, "Oh, I don't know," and walks away. And the teenage fan's basically doesn't believe this. He's like, "This is bullshit. Owen knows all about this. This is bullshit." The lad then tells Nick that both Elijah Schaffer and Ali Alexander on separate occasions have attempted to ply him with alcohol and asked him for sex. And after being told that, he says, yeah, he was so gay for me. Ali Alexander is a total paedophile. To which Fuentes responds, yes, how do people not know about that? Jake Lloyd, who was employed by InfoWars at the time, then asked the teenage fan to repeat what Owen Schroyer said. And the teenage fan clarifies to Jake Lloyd, who was an InfoWars employee, and also to Nick Fuentes, that Ali Alexander tried to solicit him for sex and offered to pay the teenager to do chores for him. This is on video. So I think it's safe to say that everybody had an inkling, at least of the rumors that this was happening, a long time before this came out in the public. And so there's an element of truth to what Nick is saying about Milo hanging on to it, but there's definitely an inkling of truth to what Milo is saying about Nick hanging on to it. And that perfectly encapsulates what's wrong with these people. They don't care about anything. They don't care about the ideology they don't prefer about the values that they proclaim to be involved in. You've got Candace Owens with potentially her sham marriage, according to the allegations of all these other people who apparently were friends or are friends or were friends at other times. You've got everybody accusing everybody else of being a closeted homosexual, and then everybody accusing everybody else of knowing about this paedophile that they all worked with for a number of years, and everyone claiming that everybody else has covered it up, whilst clearly having known themselves for a long, long time that this was going on. I told you it was a Razzle stack.